My daughter took my mountain cabin and gave it to her husband's family, saying, "It's theirs now. You can't come here anymore." I smiled and nodded, hiding my anger, but when they came to move in, I prepared a surprise that would change everything forever. I'm Marcus Thompson, 55 years old, and I never thought my own flesh and blood would try to steal from me like this. I slammed the truck door and grabbed my fishing gear, already picturing the quiet weekend ahead by Pine Creek. 3 days of peace at my cabin in the Sierra foothills, exactly what I needed after another exhausting week managing what was left of Thompson Construction. The 2-hour drive from Modesto had been worth it just to see those pine trees again. Built this place stick by stick with my own hands, every beam placed with military precision learned in the Army Corps of Engineers. But something was wrong. 2 figures in bathrobes stood on my deck, coffee mugs steaming in their hands. My daughter Ashley leaned against the railing, her blonde hair catching the morning sun. Behind her, a man I recognized as her husband Tyler shifted uncomfortably when he spotted me. "What the hell?" I muttered, my tackle box slipping from suddenly numb fingers. Ashley straightened, her face hardening into an expression I'd never seen before. Not even during her worst teenage years had she looked at me with such cold dismissal. The little girl who used to beg me for bedtime stories about my Army days had turned into someone I barely recognized. "Dad, you can't stay here," she called out, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Tyler and I are planning a romantic weekend." I blinked, certain I'd misheard. This was my cabin. The deed had my name on it, bought with money I'd earned building half the commercial district in Central Valley over 28 years. Sarah and I had picked out every beam, every fixture, every piece of furniture. Built most of it during my off-duty weekends when I was transitioning from military service to civilian construction work. "But Ashley, this is my cabin," I started, my voice trailing off as the absurdity of having to state this obvious fact hit me. "I don't care," she set her mug down with a sharp clink. "We were here first, and we're not leaving." Tyler mumbled something I couldn't catch, but Ashley waved him off like she was dismissing one of my construction crew. Her bathrobe fell open slightly, and she pulled it tighter with an angry jerk. "Honey, I drove 2 hours," I said, taking a tentative step toward the front door. "I just wanted to spend the weekend fishing. Get some peace after this week." "Get out of here and don't bother us." Ashley's voice rose to a shout. "You're just in the way anyway." The words hit me like a physical blow. In the way? This was my property, my retreat, the place where Sarah and I had planned to grow old together, where we dreamed of watching grandchildren learn to fish in Pine Creek, where I came to feel close to her memory after she passed 3 years ago from cancer. I stood there, tackle box at my feet, staring at my only child as she glared at me from the deck of my own home. Tyler looked everywhere except at me, his face flushed red above his bathrobe collar. Reminded me of recruits who knew they were in the wrong but didn't have the backbone to speak up. 26 years old, and Ashley was ordering me off my own property like I was some unwanted stranger. The girl who used to climb into my lap for bedtime stories, who'd called me daddy until she turned 16, who'd sobbed in my arms at her mother's funeral. Sarah's voice whispered in my memory, "Be patient with her, Mac. She's still processing the grief. Give her time. 3 years." I'd given her 3 years of patience, of understanding, of bending over backward to accommodate her moods and demands, paid for her wedding to Tyler, her car payments, her college loans, that fancy apartment deposit in Sacramento. And this was what it had gotten me. The military had taught me about strategic retreats. Sometimes you pull back to regroup and plan your next move. But this felt different. This felt like surrender. "Fine," I heard myself say, the word tasting like ash. "Fine, I'll go." I bent to pick up my tackle box, my knees creaking with the motion. 55 years old, 6 years in the Army, 28 years building a construction business from nothing, and my own daughter was treating me like dirt on her shoes. "Good," Ashley called out. "Next time, call first. Next time, call first to use my own property, the property I'd been building since before she was born." I walked back to my truck on unsteady legs, each step feeling like a retreat from some battlefield I hadn't even known I was supposed to fight on. Behind me, I heard Ashley's voice, softer now, talking to Tyler about their plans for dinner. The engine turned over with a smooth rumble. American engineering, reliable as always, unlike family, apparently. I backed out of the gravel driveway I'd laid myself 3 summers ago, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles went white. In my rearview mirror, I caught a glimpse of Ashley and Tyler settling back into their chairs on the deck, already dismissing my existence. My daughter raised her coffee mug in what might have been a toast, or might have been a final goodbye. The road back to Modesto stretched ahead, empty and long. I'd be driving home in defeat, tail between my legs, just like Sarah always worried I would. Just like I always did when it came to Ashley. The girl had learned early that Daddy would always give in, always choose peace over confrontation, always write another check instead of drawing a line. Maybe it was time to remember what the Army had taught me about holding your ground. Monday evening found me in my home office, nursing lukewarm coffee and the remnants of a solitary dinner. 3 days had crawled by since Friday's humiliation at the cabin. Saturday, I jumped every time the phone rang, expecting Ashley to call with some explanation, maybe even an apology. Sunday brought the uncomfortable realization that maybe I was always too quick to surrender, too willing to keep the peace at any cost. The house felt too quiet without Sarah's presence. She'd been the one who knew how to handle Ashley's moods, how to set boundaries without breaking hearts. I'd always been the pushover parent, the one who said yes when Sarah said no, who handed out 20s when she insisted on teaching responsibility. "You're too soft on her, Mac," Sarah used to say, but always with a smile. "That girl's got you wrapped around her little finger." She'd been right. Even after Sarah's funeral, when Ashley started making more and more demands, I kept telling myself it was grief. The girl had lost her mother. She was acting out. She needed time to heal. But 3 years of patience had taught Ashley that Daddy would always cave. Every crisis became my financial responsibility. Every problem became mine to solve. I'd created a monster, and now she was devouring everything I'd worked for. The phone's shrill ring cut through my thoughts like a drill sergeant's whistle. "Dad." Ashley's voice carried none of the warmth I'd desperately hoped for. Cold, businesslike, like she was calling a contractor about a late delivery. "Listen carefully. Tyler and I have decided. The cabin now belongs to his parents." My coffee mug froze halfway to my lips. The Army had taught me to stay calm under pressure, but this blindsided me completely. "What? Ashley? What are you talking about? Harold and Patricia Williams. It's their home now." Her words dropped like stones into still water. "You're forbidden from going there anymore." The leather chair creaked as I sat forward, my back straightening into military posture without conscious thought. "Ashley, have you lost your mind? You can't just take my property." "Actually, I can, and I am." Her voice sharpened to a blade's edge. "You hardly use it anyway, and they desperately need proper housing. Their landlord's selling their apartment building." 28 years of 12-hour days building my construction business flashed through my mind. Every permit fight with stubborn city officials, every difficult client who tried to change specs mid-project, every sacrifice Sarah and I had made to afford that dream cabin in the mountains. I'd started Thompson Construction with a single crew and a beat-up truck after leaving the Army. Built it project by project, reputation by reputation, until we were handling major commercial contracts across the Central Valley. "It's my cabin." The words exploded out of me with surprising force. I worked 28 years to build that place, laid every foundation stone myself. Ashley's laugh held no humor, the sound sharp and dismissive. "You're being ridiculously selfish. After everything we've done for you since Mom died." Something snapped inside me, like a support beam finally giving way under too much weight. "Everything you've done for me?" My voice rose to match hers. "I paid for your wedding to Tyler, your car payments, your college loans, that fancy apartment deposit. Hell, I even paid for Tyler's dental work last year. That's what fathers do." She cut me off without missing a beat. "Besides, you're old and alone now. What do you possibly need with such a big cabin? It's wasted on you." "Old and alone?" The phrase hit like a sucker punch, but instead of crumpling, I felt something harden inside my chest. Something that hadn't been there since my Army days, when backing down wasn't an option and weakness got people killed. Sarah's gentle voice whispered from memory about patience, about understanding, about giving Ashley time to heal. But Sarah had never heard her daughter speak with such calculated cruelty. The woman who'd married a determined soldier turned businessman wouldn't have wanted him to become a doormat, even for their daughter. "Those are Tyler's parents, Ashley, complete strangers to me. They're family now, and unlike you, they'll actually appreciate what they're getting." Harold worked construction for 30 years before his back gave out. He understands the value of hard work. The irony wasn't lost on me. Harold Williams understood hard work, but his son Tyler had never held a steady job longer than 6 months. Ashley was basically telling me that a stranger deserved my property more than I did because he'd worked construction, while I'd only built the damn business from scratch. No. The word came out flat and final, carrying all the authority I'd learned commanding engineering units in the Army. Silence stretched between us like a minefield. I could practically hear her surprise crackling through the connection. Ashley wasn't used to hearing that word from me. Not about money, not about favors, not about anything. What did you just say? I said, no, Ashley. You don't get to steal my property. You don't get to give away what I built with my own hands to people I've never met. Steal? Her voice climbed toward hysteria. I'm trying to help people who actually need help, not some bitter old man who sits alone feeling sorry for himself, then let Tyler's parents find their own place, with their own money, like normal people do. Like I did when I got out of the Army with nothing but a duffel bag and a GI Bill. You're being completely unreasonable. They've already given notice at their apartment. They're counting on this. That's their problem, not mine. My cabin isn't a homeless shelter for Tyler's family. No, it's not the end. Ashley's voice turned dangerous, taking on a tone I'd never heard before. Cold and threatening, like she was negotiating with an enemy instead of talking to her father. Tyler's parents are moving in this weekend whether you like it or not. Try to stop us. The line went dead. I sat staring at the phone for a full minute, my heart pounding like I'd just finished a 5-mile forced march. In 28 years of running a construction business, dealing with difficult clients and stubborn contractors, I'd never felt this kind of calculated betrayal. This wasn't just a disagreement about money or family dynamics. This was a declaration of war. Ashley wasn't asking for help anymore. She was threatening to steal my property and daring me to fight back. Well, if she wanted to fight, she'd picked the wrong veteran to mess with. I walked to my den and pulled out a bottle of bourbon I'd been saving for special occasions. This seemed like the right time. As I poured 2 fingers of Kentucky's finest, my eyes fell on the framed photo sitting on my desk. Sarah and me at the cabin's groundbreaking ceremony, both of us muddy and grinning, her pregnant belly just starting to show with Ashley. What would you do, sweetheart? I asked the photo. How do we handle this? But I already knew. Sarah had always been the pragmatist in our relationship. She'd loved Ashley fiercely, but she'd never tolerated disrespect or manipulation. When Ashley tried to skip school in 10th grade, Sarah had marched her right back to the principal's office and made her apologize to every teacher she'd lied to. When Ashley wrecked her first car driving drunk at 17, Sarah had made her work weekends at the construction office for 6 months to pay for the repairs. Natural consequences, Sarah used to say. Actions have results. The sooner she learns that, the better off she'll be. I thought grief would teach Ashley that lesson. Losing her mother at 23 should have been a wake-up call about what really mattered in life. Instead, it had taught her that tragedy could be weaponized, that Daddy's guilt and pain made him an easy target. Time for some natural consequences. Tuesday morning, I walked into the law offices of Martinez & Associates feeling like I was reporting for duty. The building's lobby still smelled like fresh concrete and new carpet. I'd done the foundation work for this place 5 years ago, back when David Martinez was just starting his practice. Good work, solid foundation, built to last, just like the relationship we'd developed. Mac Thompson. David stood up from behind his mahogany desk, extending a firm handshake. Haven't seen you since you finished the courthouse renovation. How's retirement treating you? Semi-retirement, I corrected. Still take on the occasional project when the mood strikes. But I'm not here about construction work. David's expression shifted from friendly to professional. He'd served 2 tours in Afghanistan as a Marine JAG officer before coming home to practice civilian law. Like me, he understood the difference between social calls and serious business. Sarah always said you had the patience of a saint with Ashley, he said, gesturing for me to take a seat. From your voice on the phone yesterday, sounds like you've reached your limit. I explained the situation in crisp military terms. Facts, timeline, threat assessment. David listened without interruption, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. His questions were sharp and focused, probing for legal vulnerabilities and strategic options. Your daughter's essentially threatening to take possession of your property through intimidation, he said finally. That's not legal, but family disputes can get messy fast. Courts don't like these cases. What are my options? David leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled like he was planning a campaign. We could get an injunction, but family court judges hate these situations. They'll probably order mediation first, which could take months. Meanwhile, if Tyler's parents move in and establish residency, you'll be fighting an uphill battle to remove them. I don't have months. She said they're moving in this weekend. There is another option, David said slowly, but it's permanent. No going back once we file the paperwork. I'm listening. Charitable property transfer. You deed the cabin to a legitimate charitable organization, with yourself as the lifetime beneficiary. You keep full usage rights until death, but nobody else can ever claim ownership or inheritance rights. The implications hit me immediately. Ashley would never inherit the cabin. Never. And if she tries to take possession now, she'd be trespassing on charity property. Much more serious legal consequences than a family dispute. I thought about Sarah, about all our plans for that cabin, about watching grandchildren learn to fish in Pine Creek someday. But those dreams had died with Sarah's cancer diagnosis. Ashley had made it clear she had no interest in family traditions or shared memories. She saw the cabin as nothing more than a real estate asset to be liquidated for her convenience. Which charity? I recommend the Veterans Housing Foundation. They help homeless vets find transitional housing. Legitimate organization, clean books, and there's a personal connection for you as a veteran. Plus, it sends a message about who really deserves help in this situation. The irony was perfect. Ashley wanted to give my cabin to Tyler's parents because they needed it. Fine. I'd give it to people who'd actually earned the right to respect through service and sacrifice. How long will the paperwork take? If we start now, I can have everything filed by Thursday morning. The transfer will be official and irrevocable by end of business. I pulled out my checkbook. Do it. David smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. You know, Mac, I've been practicing law for 15 years. I've seen a lot of family disputes, a lot of people getting taken advantage of by relatives who think blood gives them special privileges. This is the most satisfying case I've handled in months. Why's that? Because you're not just protecting yourself. You're teaching your daughter that actions have consequences. Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is stop enabling their bad behavior. Sarah would have agreed completely. The paperwork took 3 hours and felt like the most important mission briefing of my life. David spread documents across his conference table like battle plans, each signature representing another strategic move in a war I'd never wanted to fight but was damn sure going to win. Property deed transfer to the Veterans Housing Foundation, David explained, sliding the first document across the polished wood. This makes them the legal owners. I signed with the same steady hand that had once signed requisition orders for bridge building equipment in Kosovo. The Army Corps of Engineers had taught me that infrastructure was everything. Build it right, build it strong, and it would protect people long after you were gone. This felt like building one final unbreachable fortification. Lifetime beneficiary agreement, David continued. This guarantees your exclusive use of the property until death. Nobody can evict you, change the locks, or restrict your access. Another signature. I thought about Ashley's voice on the phone, so cold and calculating. You're old and alone now, she'd said. Well, maybe I was getting older, but I wasn't rolling over to die just yet. Charitable donation documentation for tax purposes. The IRS will need this come April. I paused with the pen halfway to paper. What's the cabin worth for tax purposes? Current market assessment puts it at $420,000. You'll get a substantial charitable deduction, $420,000, more money than my father had seen in his entire lifetime working the oil fields, more than I'd made in my first 5 years of construction work. Ashley was demanding I hand over nearly $500,000 in real estate to people I'd never met because her husband couldn't provide for his own parents. The memory hit me like a flashback. Ashley at 8 years old, learning to cast a fishing line off the cabin's dock. Sarah sitting in a lawn chair, her hands resting on her pregnant belly. We'd lost that baby at 12 weeks, but we didn't know it yet. Ashley had caught her first trout that day, a little rainbow no bigger than her hand. Daddy, can we keep him as a pet? She'd asked, holding the fish up to the sunlight. Fish need to live in the water, sweetheart, I'd explained. But we can take a picture and remember this day forever. She'd carefully released the trout back into Pine Creek, watching it dart away into the deeper shadows. Will he remember me? She'd asked. Forever and always, I'd told her. Now Ashley couldn't remember basic gratitude or respect. The little girl who'd once cared about a tiny fish's well-being had grown into a woman who saw her father as nothing more than an ATM with property to be seized. "Mac?" David's voice pulled me back to the present. "You okay? Just remembering better times." I signed the tax document with a firm flourish. What's next? Foundation bylaws and usage agreement. This spells out how the Veterans Housing Foundation will use the property. Weekend retreats for homeless vets transitioning back to civilian life. Group therapy sessions. Skills training workshops. Perfect. The cabin would serve men who understood honor, who knew the difference between earning something and demanding it. Guys who'd served their country and fallen through the cracks, who needed a peaceful place to rebuild their dignity and find their footing again. I'd been one of those guys once, fresh out of the army with a head full of engineering knowledge, but no idea how to translate that into civilian success. If it hadn't been for Sarah believing in me, for her father giving me that first construction job, I might have ended up homeless myself. "There's one more thing," David said, pulling out a manila folder. "The Foundation's local coordinator wants to meet with you. Her name's Linda Rodriguez, former Army medic, served 3 tours in Iraq. She runs the Transitional Housing Program, another veteran, another person who understood that respect was earned, not demanded. When can we meet? She's available Thursday afternoon right after the transfer becomes official. Wants to thank you personally and discuss how they'll use the facility." I thought about Ashley's threats, about Tyler's parents driving 400 miles expecting to move into my cabin this weekend. They'd be in for quite a surprise when they discovered they were trespassing on property owned by a veterans charity. "David, what happens if Ashley tries to interfere with the Foundation's use of the property?" His smile turned predatory. "Trespassing on charitable property, interference with a federally recognized nonprofit organization, possible criminal charges. Much more serious than a family dispute. Local law enforcement takes that stuff very seriously." Good. We spent another hour going over details, contingencies, potential legal challenges. David's military training showed in his methodical approach, his attention to detail, his understanding that preparation prevented problems. By the time we finished, I felt like we'd constructed something unbreachable. "One last question," David said as he gathered the signed documents. "Any regrets? Last chance to change your mind." I thought about that 8-year-old girl releasing a fish back into Pine Creek, about Sarah's dreams for grandchildren learning to fish in the same spot, about 28 years of building something only to have it threatened by the person who should have protected it most. "No regrets," I said, standing up and shaking his hand. "Ashley wants to play hardball with a guy who spent 6 years in the Army Corps of Engineers and 28 years in construction. Let's see how that works out for her." David's grin was pure Marine satisfaction. "Semper Fi, Mac. Game on." The paperwork would be filed Thursday morning. Ashley's ultimatum weekend was about to become very interesting. Thursday morning arrived with the crisp clarity of a military operation finally set in motion. I'd slept better the night before than I had in months, the kind of deep rest that comes from knowing you've made the right decision under fire. David called it 900 hours sharp, old habits die hard, to confirm the paperwork had been filed and processed. "It's official, Mac. As of this morning, the Veterans Housing Foundation owns your cabin. You're now the lifetime beneficiary of property worth $420,000 that your daughter can never inherit, never sell, and never give away to anyone." Outstanding. The military term slipped out naturally. "Any word from Ashley yet?" Radio silence so far. But the day's young. I spent the morning at my desk, going through old photos while I waited for the inevitable explosion. Pictures of Sarah and me breaking ground for the Cabin Foundation in 1998, both of us young and optimistic about the future. Ashley's high school graduation party on the cabin deck, surrounded by friends who treated me with respect back then. Sarah's last Christmas, weak from chemo but insisting we drive up to the mountains for one final family celebration. That had been 3 years ago. Sarah died 2 months later, and Ashley's transformation began almost immediately. First it was small things, borrowing money for emergencies that never seemed to require payment back. Then bigger asks, co-signing for Tyler's truck, covering their apartment deposit when his job fell through again, paying for their elaborate wedding that cost more than my first year in construction. Every time I'd written a check, I told myself it was temporary grief. Ashley would get back on her feet. She'd remember the values Sarah and I had taught her. she'd start acting like the responsible adult we'd raised. Instead, each bailout had taught her that daddy was an unlimited resource, that family meant never having to face consequences, that love could be measured in dollar signs and property transfers. Well, those lessons were about to change. The phone rang at 13:47 hours. Ashley's number. "Dad, we need to talk." Her voice carried a different tone than Monday's ultimatum. Harder, more focused, like she'd spent 3 days planning her next attack. "I'm listening. Tyler's parents are loading the moving truck right now. They'll be at the cabin by 6 tonight to start moving in. I wanted to give you one last chance to be reasonable about this. One last chance to surrender," she meant. To roll over and play dead like I'd been doing since Sarah's funeral. To prove that 28 years of business success and 6 years of military service meant nothing when my daughter decided to flex her emotional manipulation muscles. "Ashley, I want you to listen very carefully. The cabin is no longer mine to give away." Silence. Then, in a voice so quiet I almost missed it, "What do you mean?" "I mean, I transferred ownership Tuesday morning. The property now belongs to the Veterans Housing Foundation." The silence stretched longer this time. I could practically hear the gears grinding in her head, trying to process information that didn't fit her script. "You're lying." The words came out flat and mechanical. "David Martinez has all the paperwork. The transfer is official and irrevocable as of this morning." "You can't do that." Her voice exploded through the phone line. "That's my inheritance. You promised that cabin would stay in the family. It was your inheritance. Past tense. And I never promised anything to someone who threatened to steal my property." Tyler's voice in the background, muffled but urgent. "What's he saying? What happened to the cabin?" Ashley's voice, hand covering the phone. "He gave it away. To some veterans charity. To homeless veterans," I corrected. "People who actually earned the right to respect through service and sacrifice. This is just spite. Pure revenge." Ashley's composure was cracking like a dam under pressure. "You're destroying our future because your feelings got hurt. I'm protecting my property from people who think they can steal it through threats and intimidation. You declared war on the wrong veterans, sweetheart. Tyler's family is driving 400 miles. They've already given notice at their apartment. They've spent money on this move. Then I suggest you call them immediately and explain that counting chickens before they hatch is always a mistake. Maybe Tyler can finally step up and provide for his own parents instead of expecting his wife's father to do it. You've destroyed everything. They have nowhere to go. They can go anywhere they want except my former cabin. And next time you want to threaten someone, pick somebody who doesn't have 28 years of construction experience and 6 years of military training. This was strategic planning 101, Ashley. You just got outmaneuvered." The line went quiet except for Ashley's ragged breathing. When she spoke again, her voice carried a coldness I'd never heard before, like winter wind through bare trees. "Fine. You want to play it this way? You'll never see me again. Never meet your grandchildren if we have any. Never be part of this family. Tyler's parents will show up at that cabin tonight and we'll see what your precious charity does about it." "No, you won't see what the charity does. You'll see what the sheriff's department does when I report trespassers on charitable property. Breaking and entering, interference with a nonprofit organization, possible criminal charges. Your in-laws might end up in county lockup instead of my cabin." Ashley's sharp intake of breath told me she hadn't considered the criminal implications. Threatening to steal family property was one thing. Trespassing on veterans' charity property was entirely another. "This isn't over," she whispered. "Yes, it is. It was over the moment you threatened to steal my property. Everything since then has just been cleanup." The line went dead. I set the phone down and walked to my kitchen window, looking out at Sarah's old vegetable garden. For the first time in 3 years, I felt like the man she'd married. Thursday afternoon found me sitting across from Linda Rodriguez in David's conference room, sharing coffee and war stories like old comrades. She was smaller than I'd expected, maybe 5'4", but she carried herself with the unmistakable bearing of someone who'd seen combat and come home stronger. Her handshake had the firm grip of a medic who'd saved lives under fire. 3 tours in Iraq, she said, settling into her chair with practiced efficiency. Started as a combat medic, ended up running field hospitals. Came home in 2010 to discover that civilian healthcare didn't know what to do with someone who'd been keeping soldiers alive in 100-degree heat while mortars were falling. "Kosovo and Bosnia for me," I replied. Army Corps of Engineers, 1987 to 1993. Built bridges, restored infrastructure, tried to put countries back together one foundation at a time. Different wars, same story. We all came home to find out that serving your country is great until you need help yourself. Linda pulled out a tablet and started swiping through photos. That's why the Veterans Housing Foundation matters so much. We've got 40,000 homeless veterans nationwide. Men and women who served with honor and fell through the cracks. She showed me pictures of the foundation's other properties, a converted warehouse in Sacramento providing temporary housing for 20 veterans, a small ranch in Fresno where vets learned job skills while working with horses. Simple places, clean and dignified, where people who'd served their country could rebuild their lives without shame. Your cabin will be our first mountain retreat facility, Linda explained. Weekend programs for veterans dealing with PTSD, substance abuse, job training issues. Small groups, 8 to 10 people maximum. Peer counseling, outdoor therapy, skills workshops, the kind of healing that happens when veterans help other veterans. Sounds like exactly what the place should be used for. I thought about Ashley's demand that I hand over the cabin to Tyler's parents, people who'd never served anything except their own convenience. How soon can you start programs? We've got our first group scheduled for next weekend. 10 vets from the Central Valley all transitioning back to civilian life. They'll arrive Friday evening for a 3-day intensive. Linda's eyes lit up with the passion of someone who'd found her mission. Unless you need more time to transition your personal belongings, no transition needed. The place is ready to serve. I pulled out my keys and handed her the cabin set. Everything's in working order. Propane tanks full, water system's been winterized and reactivated, fishing licenses are current for Pine Creek. Linda took the keys with the reverence of someone receiving a sacred trust. Mr. Thompson, do you understand what this gift means? Not just the financial value, but the impact on veterans who've lost hope? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text message. Ashley's number. Tyler's parents are 2 hours out. Last chance to fix this before it gets ugly. I showed the message to Linda and David. My daughter and her in-laws are planning to trespass on your property this evening. They seem to think they can intimidate their way into possession. Linda's expression hardened into the look of a medic who'd dealt with troublemakers in field hospitals. Some people don't understand that veteran property is protected by more than just lawyers. How do you want to handle this? David leaned forward, his Marine training evident in his tactical assessment. We've got several options. I can call the sheriff's department and have deputies waiting when they arrive. Or we can let them make the mistake and arrest them after they break in. There's a third option, Linda said quietly. I'll be at the cabin tonight, conducting a site survey for next weekend's program. If uninvited guests show up while I'm working, well, that's trespassing and interference with charitable operations. Federal charges, not local misdemeanors. The beauty of it hit me immediately. Ashley expected to find the cabin empty, ready for Tyler's parents to move in without resistance. Instead, they'd encounter a combat veteran conducting official business on property protected by federal law. I like that plan, I said, but I should be there too. It's still my lifetime residence, and I want to see Ashley's face when she realizes what she's actually done. Absolutely not, David interrupted. Family confrontations can escalate unpredictably. If this turns physical, you don't want to be anywhere near it. Linda held up her hand. Actually, Mr. Thompson's presence might prevent escalation. Hard to claim you're being victimized by strangers when the property's lifetime beneficiary is sitting on his own deck, drinking coffee with a Foundation representative. We spent the next hour planning like a military operation. Linda would arrive at 1700 hours to conduct her official site survey. I'd be there as the lifetime beneficiary, exercising my legal right to use the property. David would remain on standby with the sheriff's department, ready to respond if things went sideways. What if they try to claim squatters' rights? I asked. Tyler's parents might refuse to leave once they're inside. Won't matter, Linda said with grim satisfaction. Squatters' rights don't apply to charitable property, and they definitely don't apply when there's a lifetime beneficiary in active residence. Plus, interfering with veterans programs is a federal offense. The FBI takes that seriously. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Ashley. Dad, please, Tyler's parents have nowhere else to go. Don't do this to family. Too little, too late. Ashley had burned that bridge when she threatened to steal my property and give it to strangers. Now she wanted to play the family card after declaring war? I showed the message to Linda. Any second thoughts about tonight? None whatsoever. I've seen too many good veterans sleeping under bridges while entitled civilians demand handouts they haven't earned. Linda stood up and extended her hand. See you at 1700 hours, Mr. Thompson. Time to show your daughter what happens when you threaten the wrong veteran. Game time. I arrived at the cabin at 1630 hours, 30 minutes ahead of schedule. Old habits from the Army: arrive early, assess the terrain, prepare for contact. The drive up Highway 108 had given me time to think, to remember why this place mattered so much. Every mile of winding mountain road held memories of Sarah beside me, both of us excited about weekend escapes from the heat and stress of Central Valley life. Linda's government-issued SUV was already parked in the gravel driveway, and I could see her moving efficiently through the cabin with a clipboard and digital camera, documenting everything for the Foundation's records. Professional, thorough, absolutely legitimate. Ashley was about to discover that her father had allies she'd never imagined. Perimeter secured, Linda called out as I climbed the deck steps. Military humor, but her eyes were serious. Beautiful property, Mac. Perfect for what we need. Sarah always said it felt like a sanctuary. Seems appropriate that it'll serve that purpose for veterans who really need healing. Linda nodded toward Pine Creek, where late afternoon sunlight filtered through the pine trees. Peaceful setting, good fishing, plenty of space for group activities. Our PTSD counselor's gonna love this place. We were settling into deck chairs with coffee when the first vehicle appeared on the access road. A white pickup truck towing a small U-Haul trailer, moving slowly over the rough gravel like they were trying not to spook wildlife. Behind it, a blue sedan with California plates. Showtime, Linda murmured, setting down her coffee and straightening into the alert posture of someone who'd handled hostile situations before. The pickup parked beside my truck, and I got my first look at Harold and Patricia Williams, mid-60s, both moving with the careful precision of people dealing with chronic pain. Harold climbed out slowly, favoring his left leg, wearing work clothes that had seen better days. Patricia emerged from the passenger side, her gray hair neat despite the long drive, clutching a small suitcase like it contained everything she owned. These weren't villains. These were just ordinary people caught in the middle of their son's marriage to a manipulative woman who'd promised them something that wasn't hers to give. Ashley and Tyler got out of the sedan like they were approaching a crime scene. Ashley's face was set in determined lines, but I could see uncertainty in her eyes as she took in Linda's official presence and my calm position on the deck. This wasn't the scenario she'd planned for. "Dad!" Ashley called out, her voice carrying across the clearing. "What's going on here?" I stood up slowly, letting my full height and bearing speak before my words did. 28 years of construction work had kept me in good shape, and 6 years of military service had taught me how to project authority when necessary. I'm exercising my legal rights as lifetime beneficiary of this property, I said clearly. This is Linda Rodriguez, representing the Veterans Housing Foundation, conducting an official site survey. Harold Williams looked confused, glancing between Ashley and the official-looking woman with the clipboard. "Ashley, I thought you said your father was giving us this place." "He is," Ashley said quickly, but her voice cracked slightly. "Dad's just being difficult about the timing." "Actually, Mr. Williams," Linda interrupted, stepping forward with her credentials visible, "this property belongs to the Veterans Housing Foundation as of this morning. I'm here to prepare it for our weekend Veterans Retreat program." The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia Williams's hand went to her throat, her face draining of color as the implications hit her. Harold looked like someone had just told him his lottery ticket was counterfeit. "That's impossible," Tyler finally spoke up, his voice weak and uncertain. "Ashley said her dad was transferring ownership to us." "Ashley doesn't have the authority to transfer anything," I replied. "She never did. This property was mine to dispose of as I saw fit, and I chose to donate it to homeless veterans rather than hand it over to people who threatened to steal it." "Threatened?" Harold's voice carried genuine confusion. "Nobody threatened anything? Ashley said you wanted to help us out." The betrayal on his face was painful to watch. Ashley had lied to her in-laws just as thoroughly as she'd tried to manipulate me. She'd convinced them that I was voluntarily giving them my cabin, probably made it sound like a generous family gesture rather than an ultimatum backed by threats. "Ashley," Patricia's voice was barely a whisper. "What did you tell us? What did you promise?" "I told you the truth." Ashley's composure was cracking like ice in spring. "Dad doesn't need this place anymore, and you do. He should be helping family instead of throwing money at strangers. Ma'am, Linda said gently, addressing Patricia directly, I'm sorry you've been misled, but your daughter-in-law had no legal right to promise you this property. It belongs to homeless veterans now, people who served their country and need transitional housing. Harold Williams straightened his shoulders, and for a moment I could see the construction worker he'd been for 30 years, the man who'd understood honest work and earned respect. Patricia, get back in the car. We're leaving. But Harold, where will we go? We gave notice at the apartment. We'll figure it out. We always have. He looked directly at Ashley, and his disappointment was devastating. Young lady, you lied to us. Made us drive 400 miles based on promises you couldn't keep. Made us feel like beggars asking for handouts we hadn't earned. Tyler stepped forward, finally showing some backbone. Dad, maybe we can work something out. No. Harold's voice carried the finality of a man who'd reached his limit. We don't take charity from people who don't want to give it, and we sure don't take stolen property. Come on, Patricia. Let's go home and start over. As they walked back toward their vehicles, Ashley turned on me with fury that made her face unrecognizable. You've destroyed everything. They have nowhere to go because of your selfishness. They have nowhere to go because of your lies, I corrected. You created this mess by promising them something that was never yours to give. You're not taking this from me. Ashley's voice reached a pitch I'd never heard before, raw and desperate. I deserve that cabin. I'm your daughter. Being my daughter doesn't give you the right to steal my property, I replied, keeping my voice level despite the turmoil in my chest. And threatening me sure as hell doesn't make you deserve anything. Linda stepped closer, her posture shifting into the alert stance of someone prepared for trouble. Ma'am, you need to calm down. This is charitable property now, and you're creating a disturbance during official business. Official business? Ashley laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. This is my family's cabin, my inheritance. You can't just give it away to strangers. I can, and I did. The words came out harder than I'd intended, carrying 28 years of construction site authority and 6 years of military command presence. And they're not strangers, Ashley. They're veterans. People who served their country with honor instead of demanding handouts they haven't earned. Tyler had been standing silent through the whole exchange, but now he finally found his voice. Mr. Thompson, my parents really do need help. Dad's disability barely covers their rent, and Mom's got medical bills. Then you help them, I cut him off. You're their son. You married Ashley. You took on responsibility for your own family. Stop expecting your wife's father to solve your problems. We can't afford, Tyler started. Then get a better job. Learn a trade. Do what your father did for 30 years and what I did for 28. Work hard and earn what you need. I gestured toward Harold and Patricia, who were loading their suitcase back into their car with quiet dignity. Your father understands that. He's walking away because he knows the difference between earning something and stealing it. Ashley's face was flushed red, tears streaming down her cheeks. You never acted like this when Mom was alive. She wouldn't want you destroying the family over some stupid cabin. That hit below the belt, and she knew it. Sarah's memory was sacred ground, not something to be weaponized in Ashley's tantrum. But if she wanted to bring Sarah into this, fine. Let's talk about what Sarah would have wanted. Your mother spent 18 years teaching you right from wrong, I said, my voice dropping to the deadly quiet tone that used to make construction crews stop what they were doing and listen. She taught you to work for what you wanted, to respect other people's property, to treat family with love instead of manipulation. I do love you. No, you don't. You love my bank account. You love my property. You love the idea that Daddy will always bail you out no matter how badly you behave. But you don't love me, Ashley. You haven't shown me genuine affection or respect in 3 years. Linda had her phone out now, finger hovering over the screen. Should I call for backup? She asked quietly. Not yet, I replied, watching Ashley carefully. She was spiraling, but she wasn't dangerous, just desperate and finally realizing that her manipulation tactics had consequences. Please, Dad. Ashley's voice broke completely. I'm sorry about the threats. I was just scared about Tyler's parents and I panicked. We can work this out, can't we? Family's supposed to forgive each other. For a moment, I saw the 8-year-old girl who'd caught her first trout in Pine Creek, who'd looked up at me with such trust and love. But that little girl was gone, replaced by a woman who'd just spent 4 days trying to steal my property and give it to strangers. Family's also supposed to respect each other, I said softly. Family's supposed to love without conditions, help without keeping score, support without demanding payment. When's the last time you called me just to see how I was doing? When's the last time you visited without asking for money? When's the last time you treated me like a father instead of a bank? Ashley's mouth opened and closed like she was trying to find words that didn't exist. Because the truth was, she couldn't remember. Since Sarah's death, every interaction had been transactional. Every phone call had ended with a request for money. Every visit had included some new crisis that required my financial intervention. The cabin belongs to homeless veterans now, I continued. People who lost everything serving their country, who need a place to heal and rebuild their lives. That's what Sarah would have wanted, helping people who truly deserve help. But what about us? Tyler asked, his voice small and defeated. What about our future? Your future is what you make of it. Same as mine was when I got out of the Army with nothing but a duffel bag and determination. Same as every veteran who's ever had to start over. I gestured toward Linda. Ask her. She came home from 3 tours in Iraq and built a career helping other veterans. Nobody handed her anything. Linda nodded grimly. I've seen combat soldiers rebuild their lives from absolute zero. It's not easy, but it's possible if you're willing to work for it instead of looking for shortcuts. Harold Williams appeared at Ashley's elbow, his face kind but firm. Young lady, we're heading home now. I want you to know that Patricia and I don't blame your father for this situation. We blame whoever told us lies about property that wasn't theirs to promise. Ashley flinched like she'd been slapped. Mr. Williams, I can explain. No need to explain anything. We understand perfectly. Harold's voice carried the weight of a man who'd worked honestly his entire life and recognized dishonesty when he saw it. Come on, Patricia. Let's go figure out our own solution to our own problems. As Harold and Patricia drove away, their U-Haul trailer bouncing over the gravel road, Ashley turned back to me with one final desperate attempt. Dad, this isn't over. I'll contest the transfer in court. I'll prove you weren't mentally competent when you signed those papers. Linda laughed, actually laughed. Good luck with that, ma'am. Your father consulted with a military lawyer, had full legal representation, and completed the transfer while demonstrating perfect mental competency. Plus, challenging a charitable donation to veterans, that's not going to make you popular with any judge in California. The fight went out of Ashley all at once, like air escaping from a punctured tire. Ashley and Tyler left without another word, their sedan disappearing down the mountain road in a cloud of dust and defeat. The silence that followed felt sacred, like the moment after a storm passes and the world begins to heal itself. Well, Linda said, settling back into her deck chair, that was educational. Your daughter's got some serious entitlement issues. 3 years' worth, I replied, sinking into my own chair with the bone-deep exhaustion that comes after a long-fought battle. Sarah used to keep her in line, but after the cancer, I guess I thought grief would teach Ashley some perspective about what really matters. Sometimes grief teaches people the wrong lessons, makes them think the world owes them compensation for their loss. Linda pulled out her tablet and started making notes. I've seen it with veterans too. Some come home from deployment thinking everyone should cater to their pain. Others come home determined to rebuild and serve. Your daughter chose poorly. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the late afternoon sun filter through the pine trees. Pine Creek gurgled softly in the background, the same sound that had lulled Sarah and me to sleep during countless weekend retreats. The same sound that would now comfort veterans learning to find peace again. Tell me about the programs you're planning, I said finally. Linda's face lit up with the passion of someone who'd found her true calling. Weekend intensive retreats, 8 to 10 veterans at a time. Friday evening arrival, Sunday afternoon departure. We'll combine outdoor therapy with practical skills training, basic construction work, equipment maintenance, small engine repair, things that translate into civilian jobs. The creek's good for fishing therapy too. Sarah always said there's something healing about standing and moving water, focusing on something simple and immediate. Exactly. Combat vets especially benefit from activities that require focus but aren't threatening. Fishing, woodworking, gardening, things that engage the mind without triggering hypervigilance. I thought about my own transition from military to civilian life, how building things with my hands had helped me process the stress of army service. Not combat stress, My engineering units had been support rather than infantry, but the constant pressure of keeping critical infrastructure operational under difficult conditions. What about job placement? Skills training is great, but these guys need work. That's phase 2. We partner with construction companies, auto shops, facilities maintenance operations, businesses run by veterans who understand what military training brings to civilian work ethic. Linda paused, studying my face. Actually, I was hoping to talk to you about that. Thompson Construction probably hired a lot of veterans over the years. Every chance I got. Military guys understand showing up on time, following directions, working as a team. Best employees I ever had. Would you consider coming out of retirement to help with our job placement program? Not full-time, just consultation and networking. Help connect our veterans with companies that appreciate military experience. The idea appealed to me immediately. Semi-retirement had left me with too much time to think, too many hours to miss Sarah and worry about Ashley's latest crisis. Having a mission again, something meaningful to focus on, sounded like exactly what I needed. I'd be honored. Sarah always said the best way to heal from loss is to help other people heal from theirs. My phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment I thought it might be Ashley with another desperate plea, but the number was David Martinez. Sheriff's Department reports no further incidents. Ashley and Tyler's vehicle was seen heading back toward Modesto at high speed. Sounds like they got the message. I showed the text to Linda, who nodded with satisfaction. Good. Sometimes people need to experience real consequences before they understand that actions matter. As evening approached, Linda packed up her equipment and prepared to head back to Sacramento. I'll be back next Friday with our first group. 10 veterans, all dealing with housing transitions. This place is going to change lives, Mac. That's what it was meant for. Sarah and I always planned to use it for something meaningful when we got older. This feels right. After Linda left, I stood alone on the deck where Ashley had confronted me just a week ago. The same deck where she'd once helped me grill hamburgers for her high school friends, where Sarah had read mystery novels during countless summer afternoons, where we'd planned our retirement dreams that cancer had stolen away. But standing there now, I didn't feel sad or angry or regretful. I felt something I hadn't experienced in 3 years: complete peace. The cabin would serve its highest purpose, helping people who'd earned the right to assistance through service and sacrifice. Ashley's inheritance was gone, but it had gone to people who deserved it more than someone who'd tried to steal it. I made myself a simple dinner and sat on the deck watching stars emerge over the Sierra Peaks. The silence was profound, broken only by Pine Creek and the occasional call of a night bird. No angry phone calls, no emotional manipulation, no crises that required my immediate financial intervention. For the first time since Sarah's funeral, I felt like myself again. Not Ashley's personal ATM, not a grief-stricken widower who'd lost his backbone along with his wife, but Marcus Thompson, Army veteran, successful businessman, man who'd learned to protect what mattered. Saturday morning dawned crisp and clear, perfect for fishing. I loaded my tackle and headed down to Pine Creek, remembering the countless mornings Sarah and I had shared this ritual. She'd been the better fisherman, more patient, more intuitive about reading the water. I'd always been too impatient, too focused on results instead of process. But this morning felt different. Standing knee-deep in the creek, watching my line drift through pools where rainbow trout rose to feed on morning insects, I understood what Sarah had tried to teach me about patience. Sometimes the best things come to those who wait for the right moment, who don't force outcomes but let situations develop naturally. The veterans who'd used this cabin would understand that lesson. They'd learned patience under fire, learned to wait for the right moment to act, learned that some battles are won through endurance rather than aggression. Ashley never learned patience. She'd always demanded immediate gratification, instant solutions, quick fixes that bypassed the hard work of earning what she wanted. Maybe that was the real difference between veterans and civilians. We'd learned that worthwhile things take time, effort, and sacrifice. 3 weeks later, I stood on the same deck watching Linda Rodriguez guide 10 veterans through their first morning at what they'd already started calling Camp Second Chance. The transformation was remarkable, not just of the property, but of the men and women who'd arrived Friday evening carrying the weight of failed transitions back to civilian life. "Morning formation, people," called out Staff Sergeant Maria Santos, a former Army logistics coordinator who'd been homeless for 6 months after her discharge. "Coffee's hot, breakfast is ready, and Counselor Williams wants everyone in the main room by 0800. The easy military banter, the automatic formation of informal rank structure, the way they looked out for each other. It reminded me why I'd always preferred hiring veterans for Thompson Construction. They understood teamwork, accountability, and mission focus in ways that civilian employees sometimes struggled to grasp. Beautiful sight, isn't it? Linda appeared at my elbow carrying 2 steaming mugs of coffee. 10 people who were sleeping in shelters or cars 2 days ago, now forming a community around mutual support and shared experience. Sarah would have loved this. I accepted the coffee gratefully, watching a young Marine veteran named Tommy Rodriguez teach proper fishing technique to an older Air Force mechanic, who'd lost his job and apartment in the same week. She always said the cabin was meant to heal people. Your daughter ever reach out since the confrontation? Radio silence. David Martinez says there's been no legal challenges to the property transfer, no attempts to contest the donation. I think she finally understood that some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Linda nodded thoughtfully. Sometimes cutting toxic relationships is the kindest thing you can do, for everyone involved. Your daughter needed to learn that actions have consequences. Your in-laws needed to understand they can't build their future on stolen property, and you needed to remember your own worth. Inside the cabin, I could hear laughter as the veterans shared stories over breakfast. Real laughter, not the bitter cynicism of people who'd given up hope, but the genuine humor of comrades who'd found their footing again. 3 days of structured programming, peer counseling, and practical skills training had already started rebuilding confidence that homelessness had shattered. How's the job placement program working out? I asked. Better than expected. Your contacts in the construction industry have been incredible. We've got 6 companies actively recruiting our graduates, and 3 of our first-month veterans have already landed full-time positions. Linda's satisfaction was evident. Turns out business owners really do value military experience when it's presented properly. My phone buzzed with a text from David Martinez. Thompson Construction Crew just finished the new veteran housing project in Modesto. Thought you'd want to know. They did excellent work. Your reputation lives on. I'd sold Thompson Construction 6 months ago to my longtime foreman, keeping only a consulting role and the satisfaction of knowing the company would continue serving the community with integrity. Most of the proceeds had gone into a trust fund supporting veteran services. Ashley would have seen it as another inheritance stolen from her, but I saw it as resources redirected toward people who'd actually earned assistance. Mac, Staff Sergeant Santos, approached the deck, her bearing crisp despite civilian clothes. The group wanted me to thank you personally for this opportunity. Most of us had written off the possibility of getting back on our feet. Thank the Veterans Housing Foundation, I replied. I just provided the location. No, sir. You provided hope. And for people who'd lost that, hope is everything. As the weekend program wound down Sunday afternoon, I watched the veterans pack their gear with the purposeful efficiency of people who had direction again. Address cards were exchanged, phone numbers shared, informal networks established that would provide ongoing support long after they returned to their transitional housing situations. Tommy Rodriguez approached me as he loaded his duffel bag into Linda's van. Mr. Thompson, I wanted you to know I got hired by that construction company you recommended. Start Monday morning, full benefits, apprenticeship program, first steady job I've had since discharge. Outstanding, Marine, make us proud. Every day, sir, every single day. After the van disappeared down the mountain road, I stood alone on the deck one final time, surveying what the cabin had become. Not the family retreat Sarah and I had originally envisioned, not the inheritance Ashley had demanded, but something larger and more meaningful. A place where broken people could rebuild their lives with dignity. The afternoon sun painted Pine Creek in shades of gold and amber, the same light that had enchanted Sarah during our first visit to this property 25 years ago. She'd known immediately that this place was special, that it would serve an important purpose in our lives. She just hadn't known exactly what that purpose would be. Sometimes the best gifts are the ones we never planned to give, I said aloud, imagining Sarah's approving smile. My phone rang. Linda's number. Mac, I just wanted to thank you again for making this weekend possible. The feedback from our veterans has been overwhelming. We're already booked solid through the end of the year. Good. That's what the place is for. There's something else. The Department of Veterans Affairs heard about our program and wants to tour the facility next month. They're considering designating us as a model program for national expansion. National expansion. Veterans across the country finding hope and direction at facilities like the one Sarah and I had built as a simple weekend retreat. The thought filled me with pride and purpose I hadn't felt since building my first major construction project. Whatever you need from me, Linda, this is what I want to be remembered for. Driving back to Modesto that evening, I felt the deep satisfaction of a mission accomplished. Ashley had tried to steal my property and give it to people who hadn't earned it. Instead, she'd pushed me into giving it to people who deserved it more than anyone. Veterans who'd served their country and fallen through the cracks. Justice had been served quietly and permanently. And the best part? I could visit that cabin whenever I wanted for the rest of my life, secure in the knowledge that it would never again be used as a weapon against me, but as a tool for healing people who'd truly earned the right to hope again. Some lessons are expensive. Ashley's education and consequences had cost her an inheritance worth $420,000. But sometimes expensive lessons are the only ones that stick. Sarah's picture smiled at me from the dashboard, and for the first time since her funeral, I smiled back without reservation. She'd married a fighter, and after 3 years of confusion and grief, that fighter had finally remembered how to protect what mattered most.